Welcome to the Authentic Spiritual Journey, a weekly podcast featuring real and practical spiritual conversations from fresh perspectives here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Today, episode 257, The Spiritual Purpose of Sickness. And now your host, Reverend Cynthia Alice Anderson.
Hello and welcome to the Authentic Spiritual Journey. My name is Cynthia Alice Anderson. I'm the host, and I'm here today in 818 Studios with my producer.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Authentic Spiritual Journey. As always, welcome you to a brand new week. Hope you're doing well, and yes, it's really good to be with you again this morning.
Exactly. Blessings on the journey, dear friends. And Dave, how are you on this bright Monday?
I'm doing well. My morning routine continues. I've been, up since 4 o'clock. And so we're recording. It's almost 8 o'clock, on a Monday morning as we are recording this.
Yeah.
And so,
half the day's over for you, bro.
I've been up 4 hours already. And, I feel like, I guess most kind of normal folks feel around 11 or 12 o'clock. That's how I feel right now. It's like lunchtime. Isn't it lunchtime?
Yeah, time to eat again.
Exactly.
Oh, yes. Well, today is a great day. I know you and I are always happy when we're in the studio recording. And gosh, we've had some great shows on the channel. I kind of wanted to lift up Monique McDonald and Dr. Donna and their shows. Monique's The Magnetic Voice. And now Dr. Donna Bevan-Lee is just the Dr. Donna Show, which I love. And it used to be something like Healing Your Family Legacy.
Healing Your Family Legacy, that's right.
Which was a great beginning. And I just love hearing her talk about a variety of things. And but where we started with that show around healing and learning about addiction, that was all really, really good. And I feel like Donna's life wisdom just comes through so strongly on that show.
Yeah, absolutely. And I learned so much and I get so much out of it.
Oh, she's amazing. So, yeah. Somebody's special, when they've seen you at maybe your worst and they still hang in there. And honestly, when I first met Donna, I didn't know what a feeling was. She was the first person I met and who asked me, how am I feeling? And I think I said I was hot because I didn't know. I said, I'm hot. She goes, okay, well, let's try again. That's how your body feels. Let's try again. So Donna helped me a great deal. And frankly, I know hundreds of people in the Seattle area that she helped that were dealing with recovery issues. And now certainly it's in the thousands and 10,000s because of her speaking around the country and her vast work in the mental health field as a therapist, as a guide, as a sponsor, as somebody who worked the 12 steps forever. She's also an incredible mother, right? So anyway, wonderful to have Donna on the channel as well.
Yeah, absolutely. She's great. And Monique is wonderful as well.
Yes.
I love engineering though. Those are a lot of fun. There's so much laughter in that show.
Oh, I know. It's a lot of fun. And Shannon joining her on that as well. Not every show, but most shows, I guess Shannon's still on.
Yeah, and she does, piano meditation and stuff. That's also a really nice kind of aspect. So if you're a listener, if you're missing kind of the meditation aspect, then definitely check out Monique's show because she puts a meditation at the end of every episode. Yeah.
It's really beautiful, and she's super gifted as well. The other thing to think about, as you're searching for our show, or you may have found us by accident. We had feedback from some of you that there were so many shows on the channel, you had a hard time knowing which was my show. So we made it a way, if you're just wanting to touch into Authentic Spiritual Journey, to do that. And if you go to AuthenticSpiritualJourney.com, which will list all of the shows, there's also a place where you can choose how to listen, whether it's Spotify or, one of the other various platforms that host this show. You can do that. You can also subscribe to the Experience of the Soul podcast channel and get all the shows. So it really depends on where you are in your journey and what's serving you most. But I wanted to lift that up in case you were feeling that way. I think that all the other shows provide wonderful other teaching. But if you're just following one or the other, you can certainly just subscribe to my show.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so go to authenticspiritualjourney.com, and they're icons. So if you
Yeah.
listen on your phone using Apple Podcasts, you can click the Apple Podcast. If you're Spotify, now you can go to Apple Podcast or Spotify or
Yes.
Google Play and search, but just know that you might have to scroll, to find. There are so many.
So many
It's
podcasts now.
really amazing. Thousands of podcasts get added every week, and so the fact that you found us is no, it's no small miracle. That's no small thing. So we're really glad that you have found us, however you found us. But if you want to go directly to hearing this show on its own and subscribe to just Authentic Spiritual Journey, then head over to authenticspiritualjourney.com.
Yeah, yeah, and I appreciate you helping us, Dave, make that available. And we're seeking, of course, always to reach more people with our message. And if there's a particular topic I want to just mention while we're talking about all this that would help you in your life that we haven't hit yet, definitely let us know. If it's something I have a skill level at, I will give a show about it. And if not, I'll bring in an expert. We love to be able to work with a variety of professionals. And I've been real happy, say, with some of the interviews and the various things we brought in terms of giving more energy and more insight to various aspects of the journey through a variety of people. I had just listened again to Coach Richie's show, and I thought he did a great job as somebody that went from being a professional basketball player to dad and coach at the school level. So yeah, we're learning a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a great interview.
The other thing, Dave, give us the title for today's show.
The title for today's show is Spiritual Purpose of Sickness.
Yeah.
The spiritual purpose. Is there a spiritual purpose of sickness?
Well, I know. It's like, oh no, don't bring it up. I don't want to get sick. No, well, I wanted to talk about this topic that oftentimes what I do on the show is I take often asked questions and try to do an entire show about that topic. And over the many years I've worked with individuals and with larger communities, this often comes up, and I think it's really natural that anytime something goes wrong, we say, as Daniel Neihardt song says, what celestial rule did I break to bring this forward? And it's part of our humanness to wonder, how did this happen? And I think the piece that I want to help all of us with is this sense of blame that can come forward as well in a time of sickness. And of course, we're still somewhat in COVID, although I did recently hear it's not a pandemic anymore. And, COVID was such a bizarre happening around the world that I don't think anybody fully understands all the ramifications. What I can say, though, is historically what we've seen sickness bring. I can look at my own journey. And yes, I can even look at my co-creation of if there's sickness. So I want to talk about this in a broad manner, but also really dial in to one specific process that was known in the late 19th, early 20th century, the process known as chemicalization. Chemicalization, which is a very old word, but I think it's really valuable for us to talk about. One of the things I love to do is read and study some great thinkers. And there's a variety of people I study, and I just got a new book. I guess I better mention that new book, and Dave can help me look it up. Even though there are already 3 books recommended in the show notes. It's called Behave, and it's about how we're not too far from chimps in our behaviors, in our shadow or our positive behavior.
What was that? That was that author's name?
I can get it for you, but
Okay.
the book is called Behave. So what I started to say is I love reading great thinkers. In our modern era, of course, that would be Mother Teresa. It would be the Albert Einsteins. It would maybe be Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Gandhi, some of those people and thinkers that are known worldwide, for their ideas. And I was talking with my son recently, and he and I really love to discuss ideas. And it's fun for us because we are not overly attached to one idea or another, but we might say, what would it be if the world was led with this idea? Or what would it be if in this country this were a prevailing idea? So in the late 19th, early 20th century, there was a transcendentalism, there was all the spiritualism, there was a lot of spiritual exploration that had not been very public before. And it's interesting because today we think we have all this mind-body connection figured out. And the truth is, back in the day, as I like to say, back in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, boy, there was a lot known during that time that I think we have actually forgotten and are trying to remember again. So what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is that we do have a great, let me start here. You've heard me say we are spiritual beings living in a spiritual universe that is governed by spiritual law. So just let that resonate for a moment. I am a spiritual being living in a spiritual universe that is governed by spiritual law. Now, you have also heard me say you are a powerful co-creator. So when you start understanding your place in your own life and in the world, you realize that there becomes less people to blame and only more responsibility to take for what's happening in your life and in your world. So there are ways where we consciously shift and change, where we consciously are seeking to move forward on our journey. And it's really the soul that is guiding that. It is the soul that leads us that direction. Now, having said that, oftentimes things come up in our life's journey that we cannot predict. A number of things. Let's say a death in the family, or a loss of job or status, or something happening with our children that needs our attention that we never imagined, we would deal with. So I jokingly say often now, we're not co-controllers, we're co-creators. So we don't control every single thing that happens just because we have the ability to co-create our lives. So the discernment piece in the spiritual journey becomes, how do I navigate, the journey we call life? How do I have an understanding that goes beyond what the news or people in the world might tell me? In other words, how am I going to glean and learn what is a spiritual lesson? What is my spiritual understanding I'm to gain through this experience? Right. Another way to think of it is whatever is happening in your life and journey is to say, what is this helping me learn on my journey at this time? Like all the things that could be happening, this is happening. All the things that could be said, this was said. And so sometimes things can happen like sickness that we don't expect. So in my work as a minister, I often deal with people who have had what I would call, say, a catastrophic diagnosis. They have been told they have a certain amount of time to live, or that they have a disease that is virtually unknown to them, or that's never been in the family, and things like that. So life sometimes sends those kinds of lessons. Life sometimes sends those kinds of lessons. And so for us as souls on a journey, rather than resisting those lessons, rather than shaming ourselves when those lessons come, what we want to do is seek to find the spiritual purpose in it. Seek to find the spiritual purpose in it. Now, having said this, the title, as Dave said, is The Spiritual Purpose of Sickness. I want us first to get out of the idea that every cold and sniffle has to be investigated at the, level of the minutia. We live in a world where germs are passed and stuff happens, right? So just don't use all this energy for those types of issues. But when there is a sickness that puts you down for a couple days, or there is a sickness or a diagnosis that gets your attention, it's really, really important to seek the spiritual lesson in it. Because from the world's perspective, and when I say the world, I simply mean people that are only living life from the level of the mind. And I've been careful not to say doctors, because I have dear friends who are doctors who are extremely spiritual and say that their spiritual life is absolutely the most important part of their life and lives, and that their work as doctors, even though they are a doctor, they're ultimately healers. I said that to a dear friend, I don't know, a year ago. I said, I know that you're a doctor, but the truth is, a doctor is just how you make money. You're really a healer, because her energy is very, very healing. So this is not anti-doctor. Don't hear that. Not at all. But not every doctor is going to be thinking along this faith and spiritual line. And this is why I want to help you with it, to give you some new thoughts about it, because people often come to me and say, did I create this sickness? Did I create this sickness? And so it is, friends, a fact that we know there is a mind-body connection, okay? We know there is. For instance, if you worry and are stressed, guess what happens? Stomach ulcers, high blood pressure, heart issues. So we can't just abuse our bodies and expect nothing to happen. That is true. But sometimes a sickness will come as a spiritual lesson to have us be quiet, to have us be still, to have us be in a surrender mode. Sometimes our ego gets the best of us, and we're so busy moving forward that we don't realize we're rolling over people as we do. And so this idea that maybe sickness slows us down or puts us in our proper place is often experienced. I've experienced it myself. If you're doing too much, you do things like pull your back out. If you do too much, all of a sudden you're going to have to go to the chiropractor every 3 days because you're completely out of alignment and you don't know why. You say, I haven't done anything. Yeah, so you see, many of us have experienced things like that. Or a lot of times, if you're really, really stressed, you can't sleep. Well, that leads to other issues in the body. So I'm not saying that when things happen in the body, we say, oh, well, no, I have nothing to do with that. No, we say, wow, why is this coming forward at this time for me? Because I am a spiritual being living in a spiritual universe that's governed by spiritual laws. I am a powerful co-creator, and I didn't think I was creating this. So I want to see if somewhere Spirit has a lesson for me in this. So I often learn well when I am studying indigenous cultures, because I think today sometimes things get kind of muddied in our current society, and I love reading about some of the lessons and understandings and wisdom of the indigenous cultures. And one of the things that's really known in many indigenous cultures, not just a variety of Native American nations, but it's been known that oftentimes people that become the holy men and women, the shaman or the spiritual leaders of a tribe or group or nation, that very often it is a serious illness or health challenge that they survive and then come through to the other side. And because of that experience, they have a different wisdom and knowledge of what it takes to heal. Like, in other words, they've seen death, but have come through it. So one of the most notable of those is Black Elk. And there's a book called Black Elk Speaks, which is Black Elk's vision. But Black Elk became Black Elk really through a illness that almost killed him as a young boy. So if you've never read Black Elk Speaks, it is an amazing book. And I do already have that in the show notes for you. And it's a real important reading about this topic. So I wanted to talk in general ideas so that you understand this is not simply my teaching. Be okay if it was, but it's not. It's based in my reading of the wisdom teachings from many different traditions, from unity, and from my own life's practice and work as well. So years ago, when I was living in Phoenix, I almost died from heat stroke. And one of the things I learned during that time is that I was so almost addicted to my work with horses in a way that was going to pull me away from ministry. And that heat stroke put me down in a way I had never, ever experienced. And I was very, very ill. My thyroid quit working. My adrenals were knocked out. I couldn't really go in the sun. And I had to lie down in the middle of the day every day simply to get through my work day, which people that know me now have a hard time, imagining that level of illness. But what it enabled me to do is it got me quiet. And every single day during that meditation time or during that rest time, first I would read and then I would simply breathe and meditate because I didn't have energy to do anything else. I would close my eyes or I would look out the window and I would simply breathe and ask Spirit for guidance. And at one of my most sickest times, I asked, what is the purpose of this? And the guidance came through to me very clearly. It's like you have to release this aspect of your life. And the guidance was to release my connection with horses altogether. And of course, this was a huge grief. I loved horses. I couldn't understand it. I cried. I released. And interestingly, that was the beginning of my healing. I started giving away things that were associated with horses. And I would get every item that I had, a book or gear or riding helmets or boots, because I had been volunteering at a place that helped riders with disabilities. And I was really guided to give away my saddle, everything to that organization. Now, I can tell you that without that sickness, I never would have been willing to do that. But in fact, that heat stroke happened when I was riding outside in 116-degree heat. And the reason it happened is not the heat and not that I was not drinking water. It was that I had an issue with my belly. I had an issue with my whole system was pretty destroyed. So I wasn't absorbing anything I was drinking. So it also gave me an indicator as to where I needed to heal in my body as well. So not only in my time of sickness was there a spiritual healing, it began my physical healing as well. So I had to go on a diet where I ate no wheat, no dairy. I had to take things out of my diet that were destroying my inner stomach lining. So it was a learning on many, many levels. What I can tell you is then after giving up horses and giving all that away, 3 years later, I was in meditation and received the guidance. Okay, time to go back to horses. Even though I had completely given it up. So when I went back to horses this time, my way of approaching it was balanced. And I wouldn't be dumb enough to ride in 116-degree heat. I would make sure my body was cared for. I would make sure that I had been eating properly. And it didn't take time away from my family or work. It was done in off times. So see, the sickness was a reset for me. The sickness came as a time to reset, time to do some inner discernment work. And I really thought I might leave the ministry to work with horses. I love them so much. And that was clearly not my path. And I think the only way I could hear that message was to be in that situation with illness. Now, you may not have had a situation like that. You may have had a situation where, for instance, a lot of people recently that I know, my clients, people in my ministry, and people I work with one-on-one, have had pretty intense viruses recently where they've been down for 4 or 5 days. I had it, my son had it, and there's often a process that can happen in things like that called chemicalization. And I mentioned that at the very beginning, and I want to talk a little bit about that because it's simply a different understanding or level to some of the things I'm talking about. And back in the days of Unity, in Charles Fillmore's book, Revealing Word, although I think it was first a teaching of Emily Cady, he talks about chemicalization happening when you are on the spiritual journey and you're putting all this new information in. You're learning, you're growing, you're learning, you're growing. And basically, you're putting in all these new ideas and new thought forms that it creates a disturbance in your old thinking. And your thinking, remember we talked about that mind-body connection, your thinking and your body are not separate, right? And so that impact can create a kind of disturbance. And in other words, it causes a commotion. That's an old word for it. The word today that a psychologist might use is it causes a perturbation. In other words, it becomes perturbed. Like when you have a big comforter in your washing machine and it goes thump, thump, thump the wrong way and it's imbalanced. That's like what happens inside the body. And so it's like if you're learning a lot of new things and putting in all this new information and doing all these new practices, sometimes the old has to leave. And that creates what we call chemicalization. Yeah, it's like a chemical reaction, like when you put baking soda and vinegar together, all the old stuff bubbles up and cleans out. So I've had people, on the journey say, you know what, I've been meditating every day. I've been doing my journaling. I'm starting to move forward. And all of a sudden I got sick out of the blue. I haven't even been anywhere. And I go, oh, you know what? That could be chemicalization. And they say, I've never heard it. What is that? And this is what it is. It's when you're putting in new information, that old bubbles up. And sometimes the body needs some time to adjust. My friend who's a massage therapist says, oh, that's just your endocrine system resetting. I don't think even knew what an endocrine system was. I had to look it up. And I said, oh, well, that makes sense. She said, yes. Yes, she said, sometimes there's even where the body will shake a little bit. It'll be like your whole body has chills, but it's not really chills. It's that you're resetting your body. So think about that. So if you feel like you get sick out of the blue and you don't know why, think, well, am I doing a variety of new practices and am I putting in new ideas? So somebody said to me one time when I was speaking about this years ago, they said, so are you telling me spirituality is bad for my health? I said, no. What I'm saying is it's great for your health, but you have to somehow get rid of the old stuff first. And sometimes it does happen through a cold or a sickness that you have to lie down for a couple days. Because when you're going through a change like that, your body needs time to adjust. And if you do any of the homeopathic practices like natural medicine, naturopathy, or acupuncture or things like that, there are actually treatments and supports even for when the seasons change. See, from the Western model. The Western model is give it a pill and jerk it into the next phase, jerk it into healing. Just take these muscle relaxers and keep going. Take this decongestant and keep going. But the body is giving us signs and signals, and if we don't listen to it, worse issues can come up. And that's the other piece to pay attention to with chemicalization. You could be vibrating out or moving out old thought forms that can create other sickness, illness, and dis-ease, as we like to say, in the body. So I simply want you, friends, to have this teaching so that you have a concept, an idea, that you have an awareness, that you are not just a machine that goes through the world. You are spirit, soul, and body. And in this case, you might be thinking mind, body, soul connection, mind, soul, body connection. And as you go throughout your day, what you eat, what you say, the environment you place yourself in, all these impact your, what we call spiritually, your consciousness. They also impact the physical body that you live in. So my hope is that as things come up, or you'll even hear people at work say, "Oh, I got this cold." And you'll say, "Well, you know what? God is my source. I don't have to get that cold. I'm good. I'm good. I don't need a lesson right now." And if this happens and kind of knocks you off your feet a little bit, you don't have to blame yourself. What you want to do is be discerning. Take time to ask, what is the spiritual reason in this? Is this chemicalization? Am I needing to reset somewhere in my life? Is this a reset for me, that I was missing? And simply realize that the practices you're doing, the thoughts you're thinking, these are all impacting your life and world. Yes, and that you are, in fact, a spiritual being living in a spiritual universe that's governed by spiritual law. You are a powerful co-creator. And when life happens unexpectedly, you have a way spiritually to discern through it. That you can use the spiritual power that you have to become more awake, more aware of why this might be happening. And then you get to the other side with more ease and grace. This is our hope for you, my friend. In all of the shows we give, that this show today will help you navigate if there is a sickness. Now, I want to place a little bit of caution on this. If you're the one that heard this, this is for you. And sometimes people learn a new spiritual lesson and try to fix everyone they know that has a sniffle or a cold or a sickness. And in fact, they may not be ready for this teaching. So I want you to include that in your discerning piece, that you don't just go tell everybody, "Oh, I know exactly why you're sick now." But the work is for you to do your own discerning work and do your own soul work as you move forward on this journey we call life, right? So my hope for you, friends, is you do stay happy, healthy, and well, that you are continuing the spiritual practices that support your journey, and that you know that you are a spiritual being living in a spiritual universe that's governed by spiritual law. And in fact, dear friend, you are a powerful co-creator. So I thank you for joining me today. As always, sending you love and blessings. And we are so grateful for your love and your support. Your financial support keeps it on the air and keeps us on the air. And we're honored to be a part of your journey. So thank you for your trust and for your support. We'll look forward to seeing you next week, and blessings on the journey, dear friends.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. This channel is made possible because of listeners just like you. If you would like to support the channel with your tax-deductible contribution on an ongoing basis or through a one-time gift, head over to experienceofthesoul.com/support. The Authentic Spiritual Journey is copyright 2023, Cynthia Alice Anderson, all rights reserved. Our theme music is composed by Dave Croft and used with permission from RR Hot Publishing. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.